Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a genuinely chilling, chronological breakdown of one driver's absolute worst nightmare on a desolate stretch of road. We're unpacking a supposedly true account that just perfectly captures the kind of psychological manipulation and sheer terror that can unfold in the dead of night. So let's get right into it.
What would you actually do if a lone woman asked for a ride on a dark highway at midnight? It's a haunting question, right? And it puts us squarely in the driver's seat with our subject, a truck driver named Kamlesh. It really forces us to confront the exact dilemma that kicked off his whole nightmare. Picture this. You're exhausted, your eyes are burning from staring at the dark asphalt of Highway 44. There are zero streetlights, just dense, creeping forest on either side. Honestly, it's the perfect recipe for paranoia. And then, out of nowhere, you're forced to make a split-second decision that challenges literally everything you thought you knew about reality.
Section 1. Midnight on Highway 44.
So, we begin with a classic horror setup. You've got isolation, deep fatigue, and the sudden, jarring appearance of the impossible. According to the account, Kamlesh is driving through this heavy, suffocating silence, accompanied only by the rumble of his engine. And suddenly, bam, his headlights catch it. A white figure standing dead center on the black road. He slams on the brakes, the tires are screeching, tearing through the quiet night, and the truck violently jolts to a halt just feet away. But when a terrified Kamlesh peers out, the road is completely empty. There's nobody there. He tries to calm his racing heart, telling himself, it was just a hallucination born out of sheer exhaustion. But just as he reaches for the door to climb back into his cabin, a woman's voice calls out from the dark, right from the back of his truck.
Now notice how this interaction plays out. It is a brilliant, almost predatory use of what we can call the empathy trap. Initially, Kamlesh's survival instincts kick in. He refuses her flat out. He brings up local folklore, telling her he's heard stories of ghosts with backward feet in these woods who lure travelers to their doom. He literally tells her, "You can't be human." But the entity counters this logically and emotionally. She asks, well, if she were a ghost, would she be speaking so politely? And then she drops the emotional anchor. She claims she's just a tired mother trying to get back to her kids in the city. Are you going to keep a mother away from her children? By framing it this way, she forces Kamlesh to question his own morality. Are his supernatural fears really worth leaving a vulnerable mother stranded in a dangerous forest? The manipulation totally works, and he reluctantly agrees to help.
Moving on to Section 2, the weeping passenger.
Okay, so Kamlesh agrees to help, but he lays down the law. He orders her to sit under the tarpaulin in the open back of the truck, strictly forbidding her from coming anywhere near the front cabin. Now let's look at the sensory details of the journey that follows, because they are just incredible at illustrating his creeping dread. Even though he locked himself safely in the cabin, something feels deeply, fundamentally wrong. The truck suddenly feels impossibly heavy, like it's struggling against some massive, unseen weight. Seeking a little comfort, he tries to flip on the radio, but instead of music, it only kicks out this sinister, continuous hissing sound. And then, cutting right through the roar of the diesel engine, he hears it. Piercing, agonizing cries echoing from the back of the truck. The woman is just sobbing uncontrollably. This sensory overload forces Kamlesh to act. Driven by a mix of fear and genuine concern, he cracks open the small back window of the cabin to tell her to quiet down.
And this brings us to a whole other layer of psychological manipulation. When he asks why she's crying, she delivers this heartbreaking, entirely fabricated backstory. She tells him all about an abusive husband who tortured her because doctors said she could never have children, eventually tossing her out into a living hell. Now, wait a second, catch the contradiction there? Earlier, she literally just used her kids to guilt-trip him into a ride. Now she says she can't even be a mother? But Kamlesh is so overwhelmed by the emotional weight of her trauma that he misses the inconsistency completely. His panic is entirely replaced by pure, unadulterated empathy. He even starts consoling her, promising her she'll be safe with him. Her deception is now fully cemented. She's got him.
Section 3. Sati Ghati's Endless Loop.
Just as Kamlesh finally relaxes, believing he's actually doing a good deed, the situation escalates wildly. Out of nowhere, the woman screams at him to stop at a desolate, non-existent village called Sati Ghati, and she literally vanishes into the fog. Tracking this escalation reveals how it builds into an inescapable nightmare. So he drops her off in the middle of a pitch-black forest, because she insists her village Sati Ghati is right there. She walks into the dark and just disappears into thin air. Unsettled but incredibly relieved that she's gone, Kamlesh hits the gas. But then, a few miles down the road, he passes an old, broken signpost for Sati Ghati. Panic officially sets in. He slams the accelerator, pushing his heavy truck past 80, 90, over 100 kilometers an hour on this terrible dirt road. He just wants out. But moments later, illuminated by his headlights, boom. The exact same broken sign appears again. The supernatural loop he's trapped in becomes undeniable. The road just refuses to end. The laws of physics, of geography, they've simply stopped applying.
Section 4. The inevitable crash.
Driven absolutely mad by the repeating sign and the sheer terror of this endless loop, Kamlesh makes a fatal error. And the really crucial takeaway here is that the entity didn't even need to physically attack him. She simply broke his mind. Trying desperately to avoid looking at the looping sign yet again, he aggressively jerks the steering wheel. On that wet, unstable dirt, he completely loses control of the speeding truck. The vehicle violently crashes into a massive boulder. Kamlesh is thrown from the cabin, left bleeding and battered on the desolate roadside. And what's worse, he is entirely alone in this terrifying silence. When a few vehicles finally do pass by, they speed right past him in the dark, completely ignoring his frantic, blood-soaked pleas for help.
Section 5. The boss's warning.
With his hope fading fast and his physical strength totally giving out, Kamlesh uses the dim light of his phone to call his boss in the middle of the night. He recounts this entire bizarre sequence of events. The boss listens to this wild, rambling story of ghosts and looping roads, but he takes a very grounded, super logical approach. He tells Kamlesh, "Look, do not panic." He instructs him to take clear photos of the destroyed truck and the dark surrounding area and send him over immediately so he can coordinate a rescue or get a tow truck out there. Kamlesh, who is just so relieved to have a tether to the real world again, complies and sends the photos off. But his boss's reaction to these images changes absolutely everything.
The second the boss opens the final photograph, his calm, logical demeanor completely shatters. He calls Kamlesh back immediately and just barks out these non-negotiable rules for survival. First, abandon the truck and get out of there right now. Second, flag down a car or start walking until you hit a roadside diner, a dhaba, literally anything with people. And third, and this is the most important one, do not look back. He tells him no matter if someone calls your name, no matter if you hear crying, do not turn around.
Section 6. A chilling realization.
Kamlesh is beyond terrified by his boss's sudden, frantic panic. So he blindly follows the orders. He runs through the pitch-black darkness on injured legs until he finally reaches the safety of a populated village. But it isn't until 2 full days later, when he finally meets his boss face-to-face, that he understands exactly why he had to run. When Kamlesh walks into the office, his boss just looks at him with this profound dread. Without saying a single word, the boss pulls out his phone and opens the final photograph Kamlesh had taken of the crashed truck in the dark. And the ultimate, terrifying twist is revealed right there on the screen. See, the entire time, Kamlesh fully believed he had safely isolated the threat.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of the psychological terror we've been tracking today. Because despite his strict precautions, despite ordering her into the back, under the tarpaulin, and locking his cabin doors, the photograph clearly captured the pale, ghostly figure of the woman sitting right next to him. She was in the passenger seat, inside the cabin, all along. And in the photo, she was staring straight into the camera, smiling. All those noises from the back, the impossibly heavy weight, the agonizing crying, it was all just a distraction, while she sat mere inches away from him in the dark.
So, we're going to leave you with this final, lingering thought. Kamlesh survived, but he literally never drove that highway again. This explainer highlights a truly terrifying concept. On isolated roads, the darkness outside the window might not be the thing you should be afraid of. The greatest danger might just be the passengers sitting right beside you. So think about that the next time you're driving alone at night. Are all travelers on the road truly human? Thanks for joining me as we unpack this chilling